Richard the Lionheart. If you're a free-to-play player, you've probably heard about this guy. But how good is this guy really? Like, really, how good is he? That's what we want to find out here. Hi, and welcome to redevony. I am Akayasha. You can call me Aka. Now, guys, this might come as a bit of a surprise to you, but I've been playing Evony for a while. All right? If you're going through like an Evony museum and they have characters of prehistoric men that used to play Evony before, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw me there. Okay? I've been playing Evony for a while. Why am I giving you all this backstory? I'm giving you all this backstory because since I've been in the game, Richard the Lionheart has always been in the game. But he was never really considered that great of a general until Evony released Ascension. And all I hear is, Richard this and Richard that, and, he's the best thing since sliced bread and, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, everybody just saying that the guy is really good. Now, in the back of my mind, I had always thought that I should probably take a good look at Richard the Lionheart. I just never got to it. But this kind of triggered me to be like, okay, fine, I'll get to it now. So here we are. Now, I'm going to give you forewarning. Please forgive my language, but I'm not going to try and bullshit you and tell you that I'm not coming into this video without any bias whatsoever. Like I said, I've been playing Evony for a long time. Inherently, I don't think Richard the Lionheart is very good. But I'll admit, I've never taken a good look at him before now. So, I've crunched the numbers. We're going to go through the numbers together. And I'm going to try and look at this with an open mind so that we can come to a reasonable conclusion on that. Okay? Good. Now, before we get into the numbers, something I'd also like you to have an open mind about: Paxify. For anyone that doesn't know, Paxify is a company that provides service for discounts. Okay? You can get discounts on your packs, buying stuff in the game. For me personally, Paxify is more than just a discount service. They actually help you maximize the potential that you can get from your hard-earned money in the game. So, if you're buying packs in the game and you haven't checked them out yet, I really suggest you should. I have the links and everything that you need down in the description of the video. Okay, so we have Richard here. I'm just going to take the numbers that I see here, I put them in a spreadsheet, and we add and compare. Okay, compare with the other generals that I already have in there. That's what we're doing. But before we do that, there are a few characteristics of Richard the Lionheart that I want us to keep in mind. First things first, he has no covenant. Now, for some of the world generals that we have, that's not really a big issue because a lot of them, I use Dewey. Dewey doesn't have a covenant either. The newer ones have covenants, but the older ones don't. Okay, so that in and of itself is not a big issue. Now, the next characteristic, you look at his main skill. There are no PvP buffs in his main skill. If you look at his fourth specialty, this one right here, no PvP buffs in here as well. I want us to keep that in mind as we are going through this stuff. There is one other characteristic about Richard the Lionheart, but I'm going to mention that later after we go through the numbers. So, because this is a world general, you expect the general to buff all the troops in your keep. So, what I've done here is I've broken the stats down according to troop type. So, we'll have attack, defense, and HP stats for siege, the same thing for mounted, for range, and for ground. And we'll compare within those ones. Okay. So, here is what I have for siege. This is the total of their stats. So that's main skill, specialties, and ascension. Now, we look at this. The first thing that we look at, attack. And for siege, we know that attack is quite important. Richard the Lionheart is not the worst. Okay, he's not the worst for siege attack, but he is nowhere near the best. Okay, he's nowhere near. Like you can see the generals. Like for siege attack, yeah, he's not great. Okay, So that's for siege attack. For defense and HP, however, he's doing okay. He's doing okay. The siege defense and HP, yeah, they look all right. I mean, even compared to the premium generals that we have, yeah, looks pretty all right. Okay, so that's fine. So this is the summary of what we have for the siege. Attack, not great. Defense and HP, pretty decent. Now, let's look at mounted, okay? Obviously, we expect generals like Boudica and, Tamar to be topping the group. That's expected. We look at Richard the Lionheart. Again, for the attack, not the worst, but, yeah, all right. Anyway, fortunately, mounted attack is, it's helpful. That's the best I can say about it. But, it's not all that important. But, it is what it is. So, attack, not too great there. Okay-ish. We look at the defense. We look at the HP. Okay-ish. Sort of like border middle line. Slightly lower if I look at it. I can see quite a few generals that have better defense and HP. Takenaka, even Dewey, if you combine everything together. Zoyu, Zachary Taylor looking just a little bit below. So, all right. So, for defense and HP for mounted, Richard the Lionheart, again, okay-ish. All right. Not as good as the siege, but, all right-ish. So, for mounted stats, attack, not so great. Defense and HP, okay-ish. All right, now we move to ranged. Here are the stats for the ranged. So, let's look at it. We look at the attack and, this one is, it's one of those things that you can't say on a family-friendly show. His attack is not great. Yeah, range attack is, Anyway, we look at the defense and the HP. Again, okay-ish. Not bad. Certainly not the highest. Not bad. And we compare to some of the other options. All right, okay-ish. Maybe slightly a bit above average. Around there. So summary for ranged is range attack is not great. Defense and HP, again, okay-ish, maybe slightly above average, all right, that's fine. Now, we look at the ground, okay? So here are the stats for ground. We look at him. Of course, we expect the ground generals, Isaac Brook and Leonidas, to be crazy on this one. We look at the attack stats. Again, all right, not bad. In comparison to some of the other generals, I think a lot of the wall generals are not particularly great on ground attack. Out of them, okay, Richard the Lionheart is probably doing better than most of them, to be fair. The attack is still low. Let's call it what it is. But, in comparison, all right, his attack is okay. All right, not too bad there on the attack. All right, now we look at the defense and the HP. Again, okay-ish, but I get the feeling that he's not doing that great here. I'm trying to look at the other generals aside from Isaac Brook and Leonidas. And Takenaka, okay. He's okay-ish. He's okay-ish. Maybe you can say slightly above average. Okay? Slightly above average. All right, so that's a summary for the ground. Ground attack, okay-ish. Defense and HP, okay-ish. Slightly above average-ish. Okay, that's fine. So these are the summaries of what we have after looking at the stats. Okay, if you want to check out the stats again, you can go back and have a look at them and see. But this is the summary of what we have. Now I'm looking at this and three things come to mind. The first one is that, generally speaking, Richard the Lionheart looks okay-ish. Now that might be partly because we're looking at it with, like other premium world generals and things like that. But that's the nature of the game right now, okay? Those are the generals that people use, so we have to compare him to that. And yeah, in that sense, his defense and HP is okay-ish. His attack is looking on the low side. That's when we look at, the whole thing. For, free-to-play options or tavern options, yeah, I think he's doing a bit better on the defense and HP, but his attack is still lacking. And particularly when you look at the areas of siege and range. All right? I mean, different people have different setups, but if you're going with a general PvP sort of setup, those are two areas where you need your attack to be pretty decent. And his is not decent at all, quite poor if you ask me. Now, you could make an argument that if you're free to play, maybe you don't particularly need siege all that much. Okay, fine, we can rule that out. But if we're going to make that argument, you also rule out the question of his defense and HP for siege, which, arguably speaking, is probably the best one that he has. So we can't exactly have it both ways there. So the way I see it, yeah, that's the basic gist I'm getting on Richard the Lionheart. Defense and HP, all right. Attack, not great. So those are the first two things that I picked up. One is how his total stats look, and then the other is how his stats look compared to other free-to-play options. Now, one other thing I want to bring up, which I had talked about earlier, but I want to bring it up now that we've looked at the stats, because it kind of mirrors what we're talking about, is his base stats. These are his base stats here. And obviously, if you're using him as a world general, the base stats become important because they are going to buff all your troops. And we look at his base stats, and it's pretty much the same kind of story that we've just seen on the spreadsheet. He is arguably pretty decent when it comes to defense and HP. The attack is the problem. All right? His attack is low. So, this is what he has here. I'm going to put up the base stats for some of the other generals, okay? So you can see it right now, and you can compare what he has for attack. So this is a pattern that we saw when we're looking at the spreadsheet, and you can also see it here in the base stats. So what does this mean? This means that if you're going to be using Richard the Lionheart, you can expect to have, somewhat slightly above average defense, slightly above average HP for your troops, but you will have well below average attack. And for me, that seems like a problem, because as we saw from the stats on the spreadsheet, it's not as if he excels in attack in any area. No, he doesn't. So when you add that with what you get from the base stats, I think with Richard the Lionheart, you will have a compounding issue of low attack. Now, if you want to use him like that, okay, fine. That's just something that you will have to live with. But that's a significant issue to live with. It is, especially when you consider that he's an old general, newer options are coming out, no covenant, no other special skills or anything like that. Yeah, that attack becomes a problem, because you're not going to have many options to fill up that void. So that's for using him as the main general. And if we wanted to talk about using him as an assistant, there's no point. Okay? Remember the characteristics that I talked about in the beginning. No PvP stats in the main skill, no PvP stats in the fourth specialty. Yeah, there's no point using him as an assistant. I mean, if you wanted the extra hospital capacity, okay, fine. He does have that. But aside from that, yeah, no. Just pick a different general. There's no point using him as an assistant. Based on everything that we've talked about, what is my general opinion on Richard the Lionheart? In terms of free-to-play options, okay, he might actually look pretty alright. But things have changed now. Okay? You have Dewey in the tavern, and Dewey is a great option. And the thing with Dewey is that for the stats that matter, in terms of attack, he's actually pretty decent. So the question of Richard the Lionheart being the best option for free to play, I don't buy that. I'm just going to tell you my honest opinion. I really don't. But of course, I mean, if people wanted to use him, and I know people are using him now, that's cool. But the way I personally would describe Richard the Lionheart is like, okay, if you can think back to your childhood, or I don't know, maybe you have kids now. To me, Richard the Lionheart is like a bicycle with training wheels. That's the way I'm looking at this general right now. He is kind of okay across the board, doesn't really excel in many areas. He's kind of balanced, okay? He's the kind of general that you should use, to get to grips with the stuff, okay? Get your feet wet. Ride around, for a bit with your training wheels. Get used to PvP, see how it feels, all that kind of stuff, okay? Go through the process of getting the general in the tavern and the ascension and, all those kind of stuff like that. I think Richard the Lionheart is probably a good general for that kind of use. However, when you want to start playing with the big kids, when you want to take off the training wheels and start getting serious into PvP, I think you'll need somebody better than Richard the Lionheart. Just my honest opinion. So that's what I think. Apologies if I triggered some people with this video. It's not my intention. I'm just giving my honest assessment. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. It's something that we can discuss and, get your views on that. Now, if you're watching this video and building a good defense is something that you're concerned about, I mean, you're watching a video about a world general. Of course, you're concerned about defense, right? I have this series on how to build a good defense. And I go through all the stuff in there. World general, troops, debuffs, buffs, everything like that. If you haven't seen it, I think it will be a good one for you to check out. It will help you improve other aspects of your game beyond the world general. So check it out if you haven't seen it. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. Aka signing out.